formation. They turn, they hand up, tailback right-hand side into the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Colorado!
The best sports play-by-play broadcasters can paint a picture with their words, but it's hard to imagine anyone being able to paint a picture as beautiful as this.
And when I open up a broadcast, I always say this. When we open up the play-by-play, I always say we come to you from Folsom Field, the most majestic setting in college football.
Mark Johnson is in his 20th season as voice of the Colorado Buffaloes men's basketball and football teams. But this year will be unlike any other he's experienced, with the football program going from bottom dweller to national spotlight overnight.
So let me introduce our 28th coach in Colorado history, Coach Prime.
Colorado went from being the least relevant, least interesting football program in America, and I always tell people I'm in the interesting business, to the most interesting and most relevant football program on December 4th of 2022. I mean, you can't imagine the total seismic shift we've seen with the athletic department in football, because you hire this guy that is different than anybody else in the history of college athletics.
Mark is right. There's not a coach in college football like Coach Prime, but an argument can be made that there's not another college sports broadcaster quite like Johnson.
Here we go. Come on, pups.
This 5-acre property nestled in the mountains near aptly named Evergreen, Colorado, is where the Johnsons, dogs and horses included, call home. It's where Mark's demanding broadcast schedule takes a back seat to beauty, where touchdowns are replaced with tranquility.
Not surprisingly, in the athletic world, we deal with some pretty big egos. Horses don't have an ego. They just exist. They want to please you. And so that's what I love about it. There's just a piece about that.
From training to team roping, Mark is living his dream, a dream that first sprouted on the prairie in North Dakota.
I was born in Hillsboro, and then as a little boy, we moved into Grand Forks. And at one point, we had a place out in the western part of the city out there, just down south of where the Alaris Center is. It's no longer there, but there was a farmstead there that we lived on for a while, and my dad boarded horses. And that's where I kind of got the fascination with that.
When it wasn't horses, it was hoops. As a senior at Grand Forks Central, Johnson finished second in the state in scoring. He played 2 seasons at Minot State before tragedy brought him back home.
Here I'm 18 years old, lose my father. And I lose him to suicide. So to make it, never easy to lose your father, and you lose him with those kind of circumstances, adds a whole new layer to it. By the end of my sophomore year, I walked into Coach, and I just said, Coach, this isn't important anymore. It's not, it doesn't mean what it used to mean to me anymore. There's too much that has happened, there's too much. And so that's when I moved then back to Grand Forks and tried at least to help out, my family a little bit, make that transition. Tried to go back to school at that point in time, and because I wasn't on scholarship, ran out of money and decided, okay, we're gonna get in the radio.
After earning his degree at the University of North Dakota, Mark joined the broadcast team for his alma mater. He also DJ'd at a local radio station, which led to him meeting his wife, Susan, 1989's Miss North Dakota. The two spun the dials all over the country, climbing the radio ranks while raising a family.
We did 9 moves in 15 years before we got to Colorado. So a lot of people say military? No, sports broadcasting. And we've had some interesting stops along the way.
In 2004, Mark got his big-time break when he was hired as the voice of the Orange for Syracuse University football and men's basketball, a gig that quickly thrust him into the national spotlight.
I walk on campus the same time a guy named Carmelo Anthony does. And all I know about Carmelo Anthony is that he's the #1 recruit in America. Great. Jim Boeheim has been widely successful, been to a couple of Final Fours at that point in time. It's a very good basketball program. It's a high-level program. And 6 months later, I end up calling a national championship, which then puts your name and your voice all over CBS and ESPN and all that kind of stuff.
Enamored by his dulcet delivery, KOA Radio in Denver hired him to be the voice of the Buffs, a job Mark has now held for 2 decades. Mark reached this peak because of his persistence, a trait that he shares with his son Jake, who displays it every day.
We had 2 healthy children previously, and Jake's situation was, he was not knit in the womb that way. It was a traumatic birth injury.
You go from that unbelievable high of having the birth of a son, and then you get this news, and you want to talk about a kick to the gut.
They initially told us he wouldn't survive the night. And so that has kind of been a foundation for me that I wake up every day wondering, is this the day that Jake's gonna pass? I also wake up every day now with, how can I make this day one of the best days for Jake?
And now here we sit here all these years later, and Jake's 26 years old, and he has surpassed everything that they thought he would. He's still globally affected, and he's our forever child and greatly dependent upon us. But it is, and I frequently say this when I go out and speak or preach someplace, it's the most difficult thing in our life, and it's the greatest blessing in our life.
Rather than keep his trials to himself, Mark broadcasts them with a purpose, oftentimes from the pulpit.
Through my father's death, what my wife has gone through, having a disabled child, all these different things, that faith was galvanizing for me. My old joke has always been that the Lord sent me not into ministry but into the media because he knew that nobody needed the Lord more than the media did.
As Mark looks at the backdrop of the place he calls home, the peaks and valleys serve as an illustration of his life, a picture that he continues to paint.
There is no way, with what I've gone through and the highs and lows and the detours we've taken over the course of time, that I could be sitting here today having the inner peace that I do without that in my life. And so, despite some pretty serious challenges over the course of time, that has been, I think, the galvanizing force, amongst everything.
I appreciate that as a family, but mostly Mark was willing to put in that time and that effort and persevere through the challenges because those are real. And I think that that's the reason, along with his natural abilities and skills, that he has just worked. He's put in the work, he's put in the time, he's put in the effort, and he has overcome so much. And so just want to say that that's one of the things that makes me most proud of my husband. Is he doesn't give up, and he continues doing good. I personally think he is one of the most excellent broadcasters in America, maybe the world. Maybe the world. That's Mark.
As you can imagine, Colorado's strong start to the season under Coach Prime has led to Mark gaining a lot of national exposure. In addition to doing several national interviews, highlights with his voice underneath have gone viral on social media. And speaking of that voice, that golden voice, Mark uses it for more than just broadcasting sports. He's served in several capacities, from nightclub DJ to auctioneer. He occasionally preaches at church, officiates weddings, and even announces at rodeos.
This has been Midco Sports Magazine, presented by Build Your Base with Beef Sports Nutrition and Training Program.